Thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Identifying Security MSP Partners with Channel Navigator. For those of you that are joining later, please make sure you download the applet from Start Meeting so you can install or view the screen. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for joining, making time out of your busy day. My name is Clark Richter. I'm the founder of Channel Navigator. We're incorporated in the name of FASA LLC. My contact information is there below. Here's an agenda that we're going to go through today. We'll start out just discussing some partner recruitment challenges that we see and how our solution maybe helps to address some of them. Channel Navigator overview and our methodology and how we update and collect our data. We'll explore managed service providers specifically and some of the numbers to analyze different types and trends that we see in the MSP marketplace. And then finally, we'll do a couple of live demos using Channel Navigator, use case of two different security vendors. So our company, FASA LLC, was founded by me. My background is primarily network security and infrastructure. Worked for companies like Checkpoint, WebSense, Citrix. Really, the company came about from I saw from my own personal experience a gap in the marketplace for sales intelligence on channel companies. On the one end of the spectrum, you have general business databases, things like InfoUSA and Dun & Bradstreet. On the other end, you have some Fortune 2000 sales intelligence tools like RainKing, DiscoverOrg. There was nothing kind of in between for data and intelligence on channel companies. So with that, we launched the business in 2012, headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, about 6 employees. 4 of those are research analysts that update the database, 1 and 2 in sales. The parent company also does a little bit of channel development consulting, primarily with very early stage security companies. Channel Navigator is our main solution. It's a subscription-based website that you with channel intelligence, and that's what we'll be diving into today. We operate another site called iRumbo. It's a free IT solution provider locator where we publish a subset of the data that we collect on these companies. Our customers are usually vendors, also service providers, recruiters, and solution providers themselves. Cover most areas of the IT infrastructure world. So there's a webinar actually later this week. We'll send you some information done by RelayWare, which is a partner enablement tool. And they do a great job of going in depth into how to successfully, or best practices around channel recruitment. What most people follow, subscribe to the model of building a profile and a scoring model for those types of partners. So how do you populate that data on a national scale for channel companies, right? And that's what we're really in the business of, is helping you identify these types of data points and populate that so you have your best chance of success in terms of identifying good channel partners. One of the main challenges to this is most vendors have most business profile information on their existing business partners, let alone the ability to identify non-business partners, right? Most people can tell you who they work with, maybe how many employees those companies have, but can't tell you a whole lot about who they're not working with, who their competitors are working with. Second, traditional data sources aren't really designed for channel in the IT industry. A lot of these companies maybe were incorporated 15 years ago with electrical engineering as their NAC code, and now they have grown over the years, and they're actually a managed service provider, right? Those types of databases aren't really going to help you identify those companies. And there's very little data out there on partner relationships, which really comprise the basis of much of what information technology companies do, is which vendors they've aligned themselves with. It's a very dynamic industry with high employee turnover, mergers and acquisitions constantly having, and most of us are driven by quarterly metrics or monthly metrics with changing priorities throughout the year. A lot of these channel companies, the majority of them are private, so it's very hard to find information on them. The owners are extremely busy. They're managing a lot of different priorities, so they're very difficult to get to. It's hard to get their attention unless you're creating revenue and customer demand, and their customer demands kind of drive their agenda and their priorities. And then the final challenge for the channel marketing departments is you have very limited funds. It's not as well funded usually as end user marketing, and you must deliver a proven ROI for these funds to use them. So Channel Navigator has about 22,000 company headquarters listed in it. We're about 6,000 managed service providers. We'll get into how we define a managed service provider in a little bit. We basically profile these companies with about 40 different fields. Some of the more unique data that we have is the vendor relationships that we identify, and those profiles consist of the solutions that they sell, which are kind of broad-reaching categories, services, technologies, and we'll get into some of that in the demos. Got about 100,000 contacts that we keep up to date, and we give the ability to identify them based on levels and departments and specializations, and the majority of them should have a verified email address associated with them. Our methodology is pretty straightforward. We go out there and identify resellers and partnerships through the public internet sources, things like partner locators, big company lists their partners. We get them into the database. Then we profile them. We draw a lot of the information from their website. The web is their storefront, so to speak, for a lot of these companies. And then we invite them to manage their profile on iRumbo. We do get some data from that, but by and large, the majority of it we either get from their website or call them on the phone and try to find that. Then we identify and populate key contacts. We're trying to verify these on a monthly basis, regularly deleting out about 2 to 3% the emails, adding more in, and we regularly touch about 15 to 20% of the accounts within the database and try to verify the partnership levels on an annual basis. So some specific use cases. We work with early stage companies to analyze the channel models. Frequently work with channel marketing for recruitment campaigns. That's what we're kind of talking about today in our example. As well as, in some cases, even populating the baseline CRM system. We've had people like distributors that basically want all of our data. They're moving to a new CRM system. They just populate it with our data. We work with individual channel managers and try to identify key partners, solution providers for acquisition targets, or some financial companies that help broker acquisitions and so forth. We've got recruiters who identify companies and candidates through the database. We work with media and event companies, some of the people that you pay to try to promote your solution to the channel. They use this as a source as well for data to try to get attendees to their events and things like that in person. And then we also have a whole set of customers that basically are trying to sell to sales and marketing technology decision makers within technology companies. Here's a sampling of some of our customers. As I mentioned before, we've got about 50 active customers that are all over the board in terms of the areas, primarily interested in the IT infrastructure is where the majority of our business is done, and a lot of it around managed service providers specifically. And part of the reason why these companies are so interested in the managed service providers is that in the small business world, the third bullet there, end users with less than 50 employees, they typically don't have an IT department, so oftentimes they're relying on these managed service providers to tell them what IT solutions to use, as well as manage it for them. There's 5.8 million of these businesses in the United States. It's 96% of the U.S. companies. I think it's about half of the U.S. economy, these types of businesses, right? So there are varying numbers you've seen out there. I've never seen one that people seem to consistently go back to in terms of how many managed service providers are there in North America. We see numbers that range from anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000. Channel companies, I see your numbers on the low end. CompTIA has a number that they use of 75,000 up to 225,000. We've been at this for over 4 years, and we've got about 22,000 companies in our database. So at some point, we're going to run out. I don't think we'll get to 75,000. Maybe a good portion of those are sole proprietorships or people that don't have a website or what have you. But in any event, the reason why people grow into this managed service offering, these VAR, most of them come out of the VAR or consulting space, is they want to protect their customers. Their customers are asking for it, and they're asking them to basically take on the onus of managing that IT infrastructure. Insight Research projects 11.6 annual growth in the next 4 years for this sector of managed service providers. They typically generate about 40% profit margins according to Channel Navigator, and they in effect become your customer as a vendor. If you're selling to this type of small businesses, managed service providers really need to be part of your mix unless the customers are just going to buy it directly. This includes SIs, outsourcers, VARs, consultants, different types. I'll get into that in a second, which is in this diagram here. So this kind of maps out the different tiers of what we see as the IT channel, starting with the manufacturers of hardware and software, and then you go to a distribution tier, or it could be a service provider that's bundling those into something as a service. And then typically in the tier 2, with the people that touch directly to the end users, we have these different types of we call them types, and primarily we're focused on VARs and consultants. And on the bottom there, you can see the managed service provider could really be any of those three tiers, right? It could, manufacturer can offer managed services, obviously service providers offer managed services, and any of those different types of tier 2 resellers can offer managed services. And those bubbles kind of equate to what the market segments that they sell into. CompTIA, if you're not familiar with it, it's a not-for-profit. It's sort of the voice of the IT channel, so to speak. They come out with a couple of studies every year that are of interest, and specifically we're talking about security today, so I thought I'd highlight what they're seeing in terms of adoption of different security solution products by IT firms. A good portion of their constituency are managed service providers, and we see the top ones: email, web security, network security, business continuity, and disaster recovery. Those are the topics that we'll kind of cover today. Those are obviously huge, a good portion of their constituency already offer those types of solutions. Now, and that's why it's of interest to, we have so many customers in that space that they're obviously heavily influential in terms of the decision process for customers. And as you can see from here, 2012 versus 2013 numbers, more and more of these MSPs are getting into the security as a service as well as managed services. 66% of the respondents, this is a study of about 350 channel firms. You can find that study on their website. They also have an annual conference that takes place in August. It's some great content around for channel companies to participate in or to meet some of these channel companies. We've done this webinar 2 times before, so I put in here, when we break down our MSP numbers, a little bit of history to show you that our database has grown over time. February of 2013, we had about 13,000 total company headquarters. We're up to about 22,000 now. And then how we capture managed service providers is we identify them as doing a service of managed services, right? And that's about 6,000 of those companies. The majority of those are what we call VARs. They will sell other people's products or services around their managed service. There are a good portion that are service providers, and then we get into the world of the consultants. So the consultants typically aren't necessarily going to participate in a product sale to that customer, but they would sell the actual managed service around it. And then we break down some of the employee counts of those specific companies that do managed services within the Channel Navigator database. As you can see, a good portion of them are pretty small in size. So for our examples here today, the first one we're going to use is somebody that sells a unified threat management solution or firewall type of solution. Let's say, for the sake of this example, they've got a new multi-tenant management solution and they want to expand in the managed service provider market, right? Traditionally, maybe they didn't sell as strongly through managed service providers. They're selling more directly to the users through VARs, things of that nature. They're using an outsourced telemarketing group to set the meetings, and they're looking for basically a source for lists to fuel their recruitment efforts on a national scale. They're interested in competitive market share gains, want to know who's selling their competitors, and key contacts within those, and it's specifically around 10 to 100 employees. They're also interested in the VARs that have not developed a managed service provider offering yet, as many of the VARs actually grow into the managed service providers. So they can get on the front end and providing their management infrastructure, they may lock themselves in as their chosen managed service provider offering. The second example would be more of a business continuity disaster recovery cloud-based solution. They're focused on the SMB market. They have a HIPAA compliant environment, so they're interested in some end user customer vertical information, and they're more of a white label type of model, right? They're looking for the VARs and managed service providers to kind of market it as their own solution. They have an inside sales and channel management team. They're looking specifically for companies around 3 to 50 employees doing healthcare and SMP market focus, and they have some integration with a PSA platform, ConnectWise, might be interesting to look at. There's some technical differentiation around support of a broad range of hypervisors, and they may be interested specifically in a vendor that has end-of-life to solution. Symantec we can take a look at. So with that, I'm going to segue over into a live demo here. So this is the system we give you direct access into yourself. Typically how we operate, the channel salespeople maybe have direct access to this as well as the marketing. They can use it for a specific interest, but ultimately we deliver the data out of here to you, basically to your inbox via file. So if not, on the right-hand side there you see key metrics. We kind of highlight the numbers that I referred to before and how we break down different companies. So to get started, let me just pull up maybe a specific company and we can look at what kind of data we have on them so that we can you'll understand kind of how we're creating these searches and filters to identify these different companies. So we'll just pick a managed security service provider here in Chicago. Named Archon Technologies. We basically only list headquarter locations for the most part, and then scrolling down, sometimes you find some notes. We'll have a connection to the LinkedIn company profile if you want to go look at what contacts you may be connected to. We classify them as a type here, and the private company, basic business information. Sometimes we can flag certain types of rankings, like the MSP Mentor as an annual list. We'll try to verify if they're in here or not and try to identify that for you. But really what we do is we go in there and we actually profile the businesses based on solutions, which are sort of broad-reaching categories based on Gartner, things like cloud computing, security, mobility types of solutions. And then we get more granular with technologies. Technologies, we do a lot in security, so we have things like SIM, security incident management, regulatory compliance, encryption, data encryption, stuff like that to help you identify companies that are selling solutions or technologies in specific spaces. As I mentioned before, we identify the managed service providers under the service category. These guys do a managed service. More specifically under security, we identify managed security service providers as well. Sometimes we have data on the facilities. Do they have a data center of their own? Are they in the compliance space? Usually the employee numbers are best gauge the size of the company. As I mentioned before, a lot of these are private companies. It's hard to get accurate year-over-year revenue numbers. Many of them don't record revenue necessarily in the same consistent fashion. So, and then some of the more unique data that we have is these vendor-partner relationships. So, there you can, primarily on the left-hand side is drawn from their public website. On the right-hand side from a public partner locator, maybe on a manufacturer site. Sometimes you see some movement if they're dropping vendors from their listings. Doesn't mean they don't work with them, but they may, in fact, open the door to other partnerships based on that. Then also, if we have a PSA platform, we try to identify that. You can see these guys are in service now, so that means they have a pretty mature managed service offering, maybe certifications, things of that nature. You see some customer vertical information, maybe some end user information. Do they sell into the SMB market? Do they sell into all of them? That kind of thing. So that's the kind of information that we have to work with. As a user in here, you can export a summary via PDF, but more importantly than just identifying the business, we need to identify some contacts that you're interested in. So you can see here, these guys have about 70 employees. We have about 25 of them in here. So we start with the senior level management. You should find like the CEO, the CTO, things like that. But then we also try to identify staff level sales and technical contacts. So for example, the director of managed services, people like that. And if you click on these, you'll see we also break down, he's in a department, technology, and he's actually a manager, right? He's a director level manager. He's not an account director, right? That doesn't manage anybody. So we try to filter out some of that for you. Most of the numbers are central phone numbers, and the business and should be business email addresses there. So that's the kind of information that we have to work with. You can export an individual contact via vCard. But basically, what we do is try to provide you with some different ways to identify these types of companies with all these fields on a national basis. So you can search in here for a specific company name. Let's just search for ConnectWise. It's a popular PSA platform. And you'll see search under account, you'll just find ConnectWise, right? Now, if I go under advanced search, I can search for companies that have a relationship with ConnectWise in here. That's under vendor partners, contains ConnectWise. All right, you see there's 300 companies that sell ConnectWise. So that's just kind of, you can combine up to 10 of those types of attributes. So what we're going to do for the specific purposes of our demonstration today is I've saved off a couple of filters, and we'll play around with those a little bit just to see some different numbers that we can see. I'm going to edit the properties. You can, with your login, you can have access to this, and you can customize the columns that you're going to display here. So let's start off maybe broad with companies that do sell managed services, that also sell security. I think we said between 10 and 100 employees, and they also sell networking, right? So these should be companies that are selling firewall types of solutions and offering a managed service. So of the 6,000 managed service providers that we have in here, roughly about 1,500 of them match this certain criteria here. Now we can combine something else with that if we wanted. We could also maybe exclude a certain vendor. Let's say for the sake of our example here, the client is somebody like, I don't know, we'll just say Fortinet, for example. Let's say you don't want to see your own partners in your Fortinet. Does not contain then Fortinet. So we could, put something like that in there. And now we should see a narrower list, and this might be that 1,300 companies that is our target list that we kind of want to go after, right? Based on the partner profile, they kind of meet, they're selling the solution in our space, they do managed services, they're a certain size. This might be the target market that we want to go after. So what we can do from here is basically send you all the account information via Excel file. So you can have pretty much everything you see there, including the vendor fields, anything you want, you can pretty much have via an Excel or CSV file sent to you. So that might be one thing you're interested in for delivery, the account information. But more importantly, you also want contacts. So from the contact standpoint, behind these 1,300 companies, there may be 10,000, 12,000 contacts. So you may not want the HR and finance contacts, or you may be interested in those, but depending on the criteria, we outline basically save off a report of what types of contacts you want, and then we can deliver those to you right now for this particular list here. But more importantly, a month or two from now, you may want a refresh of any new contacts that are added there. So in the contact file that you receive, you'll get, basically you pick and choose the fields that you want. We can filter out the different departments if you want. We'll obviously take out the bounced emails or any bad contacts that we have and deliver that to your inbox. We can also include some account attributes if you want those, the account employees, revenue numbers, website, things that might be helpful in terms of importing them into whatever system so that you can dedupe and things like that. So that's kind of the quick run through of the UTM example. It's not rocket science. We basically provide our value proposition is speeding up your process of trying to find all this information and bringing it into one solution here. Now the second one we're going to go over was a little bit different in nature. So this is a company that does a kind of a backup and recovery cloud-based solution. Also looking to pursue managed service providers. So I'm going to edit the properties of this one, and there's a lot of different ways you can kind of slice and dice or look at this one, right? We can start with who are the best prospects, maybe companies that do managed services. They offer technology of backup and recovery already. Less than 50 employees was kind of our first swipe at who we were interested in. So again, out of the 6,000 managed service providers in here, we're going to see a lot of different types here too. So if I sort on type, we may want to filter out. You guys might not be interested in the consultants, or maybe you are. You may want to filter out certain types, like we can just narrow this down to bars just for the sake of an example here. So then we'll throw in a type, starts with var, and that'll narrow it down to vars. So that goes from about 2,700 down to about 2,000. So maybe this is the initial market you're interested in. But what we find invariably is after people kind of make a first pass at going out, they get a few meetings, they kind of have some success with this. Now they're like, well, wait, hold on a second. What about the companies that aren't offering backup and recovery? That does not, because if they haven't already invested in a solution, maybe that's even a better prospect for us, right? Or maybe you adjust the employee size or what have you. So then you find 1,400 companies that don't offer a backup and recovery solution. Maybe we want to add to that they sell security, maybe, so they're already kind of speaking that language. They have some trust of the clients, and that's a good fit for us. And we say contains security now. Now, there. So that's 1,000 companies. You get the idea here. So you can play around with these in a lot of different ways to identify different target markets to go after. And really what this becomes is sort of a tool to provide you an ongoing flow of leads, right? We qualify them based on certain business profile characteristics, and we give you the contacts with it. Now that data is for you to own. You do with it what you will. Obviously, there are laws governing spam, unsolicited email, things of that nature. That's up to you on how you want to use the data. In our experience, most people, will receive an email or two with a message. It's not too much of an inconvenience. If you kind of overdo it, then you're on the risk of kind of, getting flagged for spam and things like that. So there are other ways, within this filter, we could look for, companies that do a specific PSA platform. Maybe you have some integration with CompTIA we mentioned before. We can add that sort of cloud criteria here that they're selling the cloud model already, right? They're invoicing customers on a monthly basis. There might be other ways with that. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of slice and dice this and try to identify some good channel partners. But for the sake of this presentation here, that kind of covers the demo here. We can open it up to questions. I'm going to hit pound. If you hit *6 to unmute, we can listen to your question if you have one live. Otherwise, I got a question that came in here through the chat that I can answer, and then we'll wrap up. I know we scheduled this for about 30 minutes. So we had a question that came in through the chat. How do you qualify if a company is an MSP? Right? I mean, that's a good question. We get that frequently from customers. To be honest, there's a couple different ways that we do that. One is they may just call themselves a managed service provider on their website, right? Then we may also look for, they have a PSA platform like their AutoTask or ConnectWise. That's a good indicator that they're a more mature managed service provider. They may be a part of an association or have a CompTIA certification around the solution. So sometimes we identify them that way. That's another way. So anyways, but for some variety of different ways, but ultimately it's not that they're claiming to be a managed service provider either on their website or they have some sort of certification that would verify that they are in fact a managed service provider. So that's kind of how we identify them as a managed service provider. And any other questions coming in here? Don't have any other via the chat. As I mentioned before, if you want to hit *6, you can unmute your line. Otherwise, just to segue back into the presentation here to kind of wrap things up, our pricing is primarily kind of structured on monthly or annual subscriptions. So you can get access for as little as $99 a month into the database. But typically, we would try to structure the delivery of lists around an annual subscription. It's kind of based loosely on a user or record-based model. So it starts at about $1,000 per year and goes up to about $5,000. And we've cut a couple tiers beyond that for some people that really want pretty much all the data that we provide within the database. So that's kind of our pricing model. And just to kind of wrap things up here, our value proposition is really that we're saving your company the time and effort and money of bringing channel intelligence to you, sending it to you via files and contacts as well, and it's all in one place, self-service or delivered to your inbox. It provides an ongoing refresh of data for a dynamic industry, and it also helps move with the changes, right? As your strategy changes throughout the year, you have ongoing access to the data. It's not a one-shot at it. In a recruitment model, when you're actually trying to recruit partners, we essentially provide that data to populate your partner profile, right? To identify the business partners that you're not working with and that you want to engage with and the contacts to do that. And then we also provide a tool that both marketing and sales can operate out of together rather than having their own priorities. And then the last one I think is important to anybody that's managing marketing funds is we give you a tangible result. You own the data, you have the contacts at the end of the day, and then you can easily measure whether they're providing results or not, right? All it takes is one relationship, and you can easily cover the costs that are associated with a tool like this. With that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I thank you for your time. Again, that's crichter@fossallc.com or crichter@channel-navigator.com if you want to follow up with any questions. And appreciate you making the time. Thanks.